It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Thanks for joining us, folks. I'm Sam Lesante, and please bear with me today. I have a little sore throat, but we'll get through the show. I have a great show for you today. Every 10 years, judges are up for retention, meaning that you, the public, decide should they continue on. Well, today I have three great judges on my show. Judge Tina Gartley, Judge Tom Burke, and my good friend Judge Bill Amesbury. They're the Luzerne County Common Pleas Court, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the courts. Now, for you who have been involved in the courts in the last 10 years and seeing what's going on, you know what's going on. But the general public, most of you do not know because you go about doing your daily routine. Today I'm going to fill you in on a couple of things. I think I'll be very impressed. We have a great county, we have a great court, and before I did this show, the best way to judge judges is to talk to the people who are in front of them, the lawyers. And I spoke to maybe about 6 or 7, I don't know how many. Every one of the lawyers I've spoken to, okay, from Wilkes-Barre up to Hazleton, had the greatest respect for the courts and plus for these three particular people who are on my show today. So with that being said, Tina, nice seeing you.
Nice to see you.
And of course, Tom, it's always nice seeing you.
Thank you for that kind introduction.
Well, it's the truth. And of course, I told you. Now, folks, I have a confession to make. You know, Bill's been on the show. Judge Amesbury's been on the show a long time. I was perfect yesterday. I had perfect voice. So Amesbury said last night, he gets the Sam Lesante voodoo doll out. And he says, boy, I got to do this because I want to take his show over. And I figured if he can't speak, I maybe have an opportunity of doing that. Judge, it's nice seeing you.
Sam, always a pleasure. Truly appreciate the invitations. You've been so good to us over the years, allowing us to talk about our treatment courts, our juvenile courts, and again, for the invitation. Thank you.
I want to ask you a couple of questions. Very seldom do people get to be able to sit down and talk to judges, okay? And always sometimes people have perceived notions about judges that, you know, they're distant, but you're just as human as everybody else, and you're just as, you know, fun-loving as everybody else, but you mean business when business is there. So when you were a kid, which was only 10 years ago, Tina.
That's nice.
when your mom or dad said to you, Tina, what do you want to be when you grow up? What did you tell them?
Well, at first I wanted to be an archaeologist, but then I was afraid of spiders, so that went down pretty quickly. But honestly, when I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade, I started saying I wanted to be a lawyer. And it's not a joke, and it was a lot of talking and a lot of fun, and I, from a very young age, was going to be a lawyer.
So you became a lawyer, and you were doing very well from what I understand. So why did you decide to run for judge?
Well, 10 years ago, I realized that it was time that maybe to stop standing on the sidelines and complaining and step in and do something. And so I decided I would enter into a campaign and a race, which I never really envisioned in my younger days as a lawyer. And I decided to step in and be a part of the solution. So entered a race, decided I would be a new voice or a different voice on our bench, and I was fortunate to be elected by the citizens of Luzerne County. It's been an honor.
When you were on the show, which I have to bring my memory back, what do you think did you bring to the Luzerne County Court of Common Pleas?
I came from a very different place. I spent the early part of my career as a prosecutor. I was the first stop grant attorney in the state of Pennsylvania. Stop violence against women.
Okay.
So I was a specialized prosecutor in domestic violence, sexual assault, violent crimes, family crimes. And I did that for a number of years. And then when I left the district attorney's office after prosecuting just many, many cases and seeing such horrible circumstances, I went to run a program called the Justice Center, which was a nonprofit organization that assisted women, children, men of violent crimes, of sexual assault, violence in the next phase of their life. And it was a nonprofit which I ran up until the time I ran for judge. So I represented a very different voice, the disenfranchised, those who needed help, victims of horrific acts of crimes and abuse to move on with their lives.
So when you have a case coming up, you know, you do research on that case before you sit on the bench?
Well, we have all of the information in front of us, and we know the case well because by time it gets to trial, we've had the discovery, we know all of the factual basis and the claims, so we're pretty well versed in the case.
What was one of the most difficult cases you had? That were public, I mean, so.
There are many cases. Homicides are always extremely difficult because once they come to trial, there's someone who has been murdered, and a jury is going to decide whether or not there's guilt, as well as which of our first, second, and third degree murder or involuntary manslaughter or manslaughter. So those are very difficult trials because it's always very, the facts are generally terrible. There's family who's lost someone, and it is, those are tough cases.
Do you ever have any perceived notions when you're up there saying, in the back of your mind, I know that person's guilty, you know? Do you ever have any perceived notions?
It's not our job. Our job is to ensure that the courtroom is fair and impartial, that everyone gets their day in court, and then we leave that to the jury to make, if it's a jury trial, to render that decision. If it's a bench trial, then it would be any of us who would be rendering the verdict in a criminal case or in a civil case.
You know what amazes me sometimes when the attorney, when you're watching this on TV or and they say, the attorney gets up and says something, and then the judge says, now you disregard what they said. Now, how do you disregard something that they said?
Well, that's part of our, part of our jury system process. If we strike something from the record, we tell the jurors you're not allowed to consider that
So when
you
they
shouldn't.
go on deliberation, they can't use that part.
We tell them, and we could give corrective instructions, and we do our best to ensure that that trial was fair and impartial to both sides. And if something comes out, we have to address it. Could lead to a mistrial if it's something that is really a problem. That's for the judge to decide based upon the motions of the attorneys.
How do you feel about the courts in the last 10 years? You've seen a lot of progress happen, okay?
It's been tremendous progress from the start. We've had great court initiatives, which Tom and Bill will discuss. The bench, we all support all of the initiatives, and then the judges who move into those positions and then roll out of those positions because we will change courts. But ultimately, we've made great progress. We've addressed so many issues that need to be dealt with on a regular basis. I'm really proud of the CASA program, the court-appointed special advocate programs came to our county in 2012. And that's where individuals from our society can volunteer to be trained, and they're assigned a child in the children and youth dependency system or a family. And they represent the interests of those children or that child, separate from anyone else. And it's been a great program. We have 50 trained advocates, volunteers, citizens of Luzerne County who have put themselves in this wonderful position, and we have 18 in training. And CASA came about in 2012. The courts were approached if we would support this program statewide. It's actually throughout our country, and we were quickly in favor. Judge Burke and myself were, he was the president judge at that time. We agreed to get the program up and running, and it is in full bloom today. And so we have multiple children who have a court-appointed special advocate. And
as I mentioned, sometimes the public does not know all the great things that are being done in the courts. So folks, I'm talking to Judges Tina Gartley, Judge Tom Burke, and Judge Bill Amesbury. They're up for retention. There's no question you're going to vote yes, because they're fabulous, okay? I mean, the entire courts, the 7 lawyers I spoke to said, Sammy, you can't believe the caseloads are down, it's running smoothly, etc., and it affects you. Hope you don't have to be there, but when you are there, you want to make sure you have a fair judge and the system's working that will help you. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. I know I sound terrible, but it's one of these things that happens. But I want to thank a lot of you for the response we got for the Better Living Showcase that we had at Mohegan Sun. It was sold out, and so many of you who came to listen to me talk. I hope I made some sense, but I appreciate that very much. My guests today are Judges Gartley, Burke, and Amesbury. They're up for retention. No question about it. You vote yes. There's no question about that. Excuse me. I'm going to talk to Judge Burke. He's a rookie in this business, folks. 25 years he practiced law, and he's on the bench 21 years. So you're just learning, aren't you, Tom?
Each day, got to stay up with the current events and current changes in the law.
What makes you continue?
It's a privilege. It is a very high privilege to serve the public in the role of judge. I felt at or about age 50 that I wanted something more. I did enjoy the practice of law. I enjoyed having clients and the interaction there very much, but I felt as if my life's experiences at or about that time equipped me with more to offer society, my community, with the opportunity of serving as judge. So opportunity did knock, and it's been 21 years of very fulfilling, very satisfying work on my part.
So Judge Burke, let me ask you this. The court has been through some storms in the last 20 years.
No question.
And you were through those storms, okay? What could you tell us, because you were right in there. I mean, you were in the storm as a judge. What was your reaction? What do you think happened? And where do you think we are today?
Well, firstly, for anyone aspiring to public office, and especially with regard to something that involves the public trust being so essential as aspiring to become a judge, it is so very important to know who you are, what's important, where your values are, and what your focus is going to be once you get to that position. From day one, my focus never changed. It was all about maintaining that level playing field in our system, which is an adversarial system. So by and large, with any case that goes to ultimately either the judge or a jury rendering a verdict, there's going to be a winner and a loser. And what is of paramount importance is that the litigants feel that they had a fair shake and that they put their best foot forward, and whatever the outcome was, they would not walk away from that experience negatively. And realizing that when anyone loses in any contest, of course, they would have been much happier had they won. But so our mission has been to keep the focus on restoring public trust and confidence in what we do. And among other challenges, when we look back, particularly the past 10 years, we had a fiscal challenge. The county was in very dire financial straits. That put pressure on the courts to become more efficient. We had the challenge of public perception. And with the court being virtually reconstituted over these past 10 years, I believe we've made considerable progress. Number one, overall court staffing is down from approximately 360 to just around 300 court-related employees. Number two, there was a concerted effort to bring the docket current. It had evolved to where average cases were taking 5 years to get to a final decision.
Oh, wow.
And complex cases would take 8 or 10 years.
Wow.
And by and large, we created some new programs assigning complex cases to a particular judge coming right out of the chute, and that has compressed the time frame for turning around a professional negligence case, a medical malpractice case, for example, from 7 to 10 years to perhaps 2 to 4 years on the more complicated cases. And your average case, we're targeting to complete in less than 2 years. So all of the judges have pitched in with regard to that initiative. And moreover, in recent past, there have been innovations on the criminal side. Much of this has been under the leadership of President Judge Richard Hughes in the past 5 years, with very able assistance from Judge Mike Vogue, who's been in charge of criminal, and all of our criminal judges, Judge Lupus, Judge Klorowski. They've innovated now. They've reinstituted Central Court, which helps process cases much faster and diminishes the prison population, which our county officials are very happy with because that saves the county money on its operations. And at every turn, we have continued to take a strategic view, not how good we are, but what can we do better. And working with the 9 colleagues who are full-time this past couple of years has inspired me to want to continue to do this as long as my health is good and I have the enthusiasm for it.
So you enjoy going to work?
Every day.
Yeah. I asked Tina the question, what was the most, and that's stupid questions, like when people say to me, what was the most interesting interview you had? Well, I had zillions of them, but it's hard to like zero in on one. But does anything come to your mind, one of the most difficult things, challenges that you had as a judge, a case?
The nature of various cases comes to mind where I had a capital case, and I won't go into any details, but I presided over the retrial of the James Lincoln Strong case, which involved the murder of an individual who had picked up two hitchhikers not too far from this location, Sam. And that was a 4-week trial, including it took a full week for jury selection. The body of the trial was 2 weeks, and then the penalty phase was another week. So wire to wire, that was very involved. And as I think back, I jumped right into a very complicated medical malpractice trial the following Monday.
They didn't give you a break, Tom, did they?
Well, we had a lot to catch up on, and all of our judges pitched in, I think, double duty at times, but we tried to make it happen and get the docket current.
See, sometimes people don't think that you guys have feelings, emotions, etc. It has to be draining sometimes, don't you think?
You wouldn't be human if you didn't acknowledge that there are emotional dynamics to serving in the role of judge. But at the same time, we have to very consciously remind ourselves to stay above the emotional fray, to keep the focus on the rulings that we have to make, to ensure that only proper evidence would be admitted during the course of a trial. And the litigants and their lawyers may get much more emotional and involved, but our job is to maintain the decorum so that the case comes in fairly.
And let me add, the three of you do just that. You do an excellent job. And I know you're excited about where the court is today, because you've seen this happen with years of experience, and have gained such a fabulous reputation, not only as a judge, but as a person from your family, great family, and I applaud you for that, Tom.
Well, I appreciate that. I said earlier, part of what motivated me to pursue this opportunity was my life's experiences, raising 5 children, and now blessed with 4 grandchildren. I think I had a fair appreciation of what the challenges are out there in society, and have strived to bring that knowledge and experience to my role as judge.
Keep the good work up, folks. I'm talking to judges Amesbury, Gartley, and Burke from the Luzerne County Court of Pleas. They're up for retention. No question, just vote yes. Now, you can't vote straight Democrat, Republican, and they're going to get the vote. You have to vote for yes for retention. We'll be back right after this with my friend, Superior Court Judge Bill Amesbury. Luzerne Common Pleas Court, Bill Amesbury. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. I'm recovering from this terrible cold. But anyway, ssptv.com, 24/7. All of our shows are there. Now, we don't have the app anymore. We went to the website. But when you go to our website, you'll see what I'm talking about. Every show we produce, 31 local neighborhood shows are there. Thank you so much for all the great responses. We're up to 100,000 people watching the Sam Lesante Show from Harrisburg beyond Clark Summit, making us the #1 talk show. I appreciate that very much. And also the positive and not so positive comments. My email is sam@ssptv.com. I'm interviewing 3 judges from the Luzerne County Court of Appeals, Judges Burke, Gartley, and Amesbury. Now you're in for a treat. We're going to talk to my good friend, Judge Bill Amesbury. Bill, how are you?
I'm fine, Sam, and thank you again for the invitation.
It's my pleasure. Bill, I have to tell you, no matter when we call you, or you're always coming on the show bringing excellent information to the citizens of Luzerne County. Appreciate it. So what do you think about what you've done and some of the incentives that have happened in your court?
Honestly, Sam, there's a number of things that have been going on since we came here. As you're aware, my background's slightly different from my colleagues. I had a degree in American history, and I was going to teach. I ended up working in the mental health system and obtaining a master's degree. I've worked in the Crisis Intervention Center for the Wyoming Valley Health Center. I did inpatient at Retreat State Hospital. I worked in a correctional facility at Farview, which is in Waymart. I also spent 30 plus years coaching young men and women. I was even up here with teams on Arthur Street. You remember those days?
Yes, I do.
And it gave me an opportunity to bring something a little bit different to the court. Our society is changing, and it's always in a state of flux. We have opiate issues. We have young men, young women leaving school early without gainful employment, and they're simply not accomplishing many things. Our goal has always been to try to give them a new direction in life, whether that took place within the context of the juvenile court or whether it took place with older people in our direct treatment courts. Having had that background, having worked both within the hospital setting, the community setting, and with the young people, it's an advantage. I've been there.
Well, you know, in the last 10 years, like Judge Burke said and Judge Gartley said, there's been a lot of great things happening in our county. How do you feel about the court, Luzerne County Court?
The court is moving forward, and we are doing exceptional things. For example, a number of years ago, taking the torch from Lou Wetzel, my predecessor in the treatment courts, we became only the 5th county in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to have our treatment courts certified. When I left that court, I passed it on to my colleague, Judge Joseph Skorowski, and he's been carrying the ball. And that's what happens in this, Sam. When I came into juvenile, I took the torch from Judge Gartley and passed it on to Judge Parentoni. And we're able to do this transition from one to the other, do it smoothly, effectively. And as I said to you before, we've been successful in reducing our recidivist rate, not only in the juvenile court, but in the adult court. And that's a good thing.
And that comes through a lot of challenges, a lot of hard work.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the progress you've seen in the last 10 years, you know, what do you look forward to? You know, after everyone's going to say, Bill, you got another 10 years to go. Okay, what do you look forward to, Bill?
I look forward to a day, okay, when we can get the opiate epidemic under control, that we can direct young men and young women into gainful positions where they'll have the skills necessary to move out into the world at large and get jobs that will allow them not to sustain just themselves, but their family. We need to do that. We're part of that.
You know, interesting, Bill. I guess a judge is limited to what legislation is, right? In other words, when you make a verdict, you really want to give that guy 80 years, but you're limited to what the legislation says. Is that the way you work with the state?
Well, we have different philosophies in the criminal court. One is very similar to what we used to call retribution. That was the Old Testament, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. There's other theories out there called Utilitarianism. That's Jeremy Bentham. And that goal was to look at this in the context of both the victim, which is most important, and of course the family of the perpetrator. Everyone in this society loses as a result of a criminal act.
Yes.
There are no winners.
Yeah, that's the sad part when you have the family of the perpetrator who, you know, they had no idea what's happening and they suffer the consequences.
Sure, because if a person gets incarcerated, they do not have the means by which they can sustain the life that they've already created. In many instances, they fall out of that circle. They seek assistance through government agencies, or they have to go out and retrain themselves so they can provide an income for their family.
When you come on the show, you bring different people on and educate us. Okay, what are some of the areas that you really, that for the last 10 years that you really excelled in and has been a lot of progress in? I know there's tons of them, but give me
the two I mentioned, but I also believe quite honestly, in terms of the cases on the civil side, which I find fascinating. I had a 5-week trucking case, and from that conclusion of that case, the following week, we started an automobile case. I enjoy most of all, I find most stimulating, are two things: the medical malpractice cases that come through, and the exceptional lawyers that come into Luzerne County from throughout the state. They are really very, very talented, and it's a pleasure for me just to sit there and to watch such good lawyering.
I'm sure that's the same with the three of you judges, the lawyers that we have. Really, I mentioned, I don't know if I said on air, but my neighbor who lives across the street has been practicing for 50 years, loves it. And great lawyer, and is well respected, and he just loves the law, So what do you have planned for the next 10 years?
Well, first of all, it'd be nice to have all three of us retained next year. And
Don't forget about it. You're all going in.
No, what I want to do is what I'm doing now, okay? It's fascinating, it's challenging, it's exciting.
Yeah.
I still spend time with juveniles. I have a medical malpractice case that's going to begin next week. That will probably go for a week and a half. It's stimulating, it's challenging, it's exciting. And for me, there has been no other experience as fulfilling as the one I'm presently part of.
Well, I tell you, the fact that the three of you have such a great reputation, there's no reason to come on the Sam Lesante. You just said, look, I'm in like Flint, but the fact that you come on the show to talk to people and let people know what you've been doing, I appreciate that very much. And Bill, I'm looking forward to you coming back on with some other people. Tom, it's nice seeing you again.
It's been a delight. Appreciate it.
I wish you the best. Yeah. Tina, it's nice seeing you again.
Wonderful to be here.
Okay. Give my best to everyone at the courthouse, okay?
You certainly will.
And you behave, judges.
Yes, sir.
Folks, there's no question about it. Just vote yes for retention. They're great people. They love what they do, and they're honest, and they're fair. We'll see you next time.